Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's a very intimidating room to be in. So please be gentle on the if you ask me questions. And to put things in context, 3 years ago I didn't know that there's front-end and back-end development. So that sort of just gives a bit of context as to what you can expect and what you can't expect from me. But yeah, my name is Ernest. I was born here in Latvia, then I went to study in the UK. For the last 3 years, I'm one of the founders of education technology startup Edurio. I won't talk a lot about what we do, but just to quickly give you an idea, we build a software that helps education institutions, like schools or municipalities or ministries of education, find the hidden insights in surveys from their students, parents and teachers. So schools or school networks can create surveys using our software where they can select between our questions or use their own. The respondents, which is students, parents and teachers, can then respond to the questions using their mobile devices or tablets or laptops, whichever the school chooses to use. And finally, the teachers and the school heads and the municipality heads have access to interactive results that they can very easily understand without having to dig through complicated Excel charts or type paper forms into Excel, which is the way it's been happening to now. So considering the hiring trends in software, I always feel obliged to explain that this is not the team. This is some of our customers. And we are now in about 200 schools in Latvia, where we work with the Riga City municipality, collecting feedback across all the schools, and Tals events bills, and a few others. We're also working with a few schools in the UK. We work with Eton College, which some of you may have heard. That's the school that Princess Harry and William went and all the politicians. We work with a few school networks. We've now started working in Finland and are doing something in South Africa as well with the Western Cape Province of Education. So we started off in Latvia, but obviously we're trying to build a global product, and that was always the intention from day one. We've now had over 3.5 million questions answered on the platform, and we're constantly building and improving the product. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story about how Edurio started and how we went through 2 phases of trying to build a product. So it started when I studied in the University of Manchester. I studied this thing called decision sciences, which is about helping businesses make better decisions based on data. And the research that I did was I was analyzing student feedback surveys and trying to figure out which course method, which assessment method works the best for the students. And I saw that there's so much valuable information in them if you really know how to look, but then finding it is really difficult because you have to use Excel and use all these different formats and it's really complicated. And then I started discussing this with my friend Ernest, who was studying in London. He was studying evolutionary anthropology, which he was building sort of complicated models to figure out how altruism was created in hunter-gatherer tribes, in the ancient tribes. Should have just tried to build a model trying to explain how altruism is created now. That would be more useful, but he focused on that particular aspect of it. Then we started talking, because he had also taught in a school, how complicated all this process is and how nobody without a statistics degree can really find those insights that I was finding. And we said, okay, well, can't we do something simpler? And so back in 2010 we had the first attempt at Edurio. It was the summer after university. I had applied to some consulting jobs, but we had the summer and we said, okay, we're going to try and build a startup. Now we found the obvious problem that none of us understood could code a single line of code, which is quite difficult to build a software startup in. So we did the only reasonable thing that anyone could do in our situation. We went to the only person in IT we knew, which was obviously the IT teacher in our school, and said, "Who's your best developer?" And she said, "Well, Edgar's in grade 10. He's very smart." So he said, "Okay, give us his email." So she did, and we went and found Edgar's, and we had a conversation and said, "Okay, well, we want to develop this survey software. Can you do this for us?" Thought for a while, and he said, "Yeah, I think I can do it." And I said, "Okay, how much do you want for it?" He said, "It's going to be like 100 lats at least." So we agreed that we were going to build Edurio for 100 lats, and then started building the system. Ernest and I started drawing some wireframes, and then Edgar's started doing some designs and some more complicated mock-ups. So here are the first Edurio mock-ups, and that's where it started. And then we had the obvious problem that when we wanted to start trying to build a prototype, we didn't have server space. That would have gone beyond the 100 lads budget, so we said again, let's be creative. We sent Ernest to the school network administrator and asked whether we could get a little bit of the school server to put some stuff on. So after some surprising negotiation skills displayed by Edgar's, he agreed, and we started developing this. Unfortunately, a month later, the principal found out, and we were kindly asked to remove ourselves from the server. Understandable. And then at that point, I had my consulting things start, and Ernest was continuing with his studies, and Edgar's had his 11th years. So we stopped there, and we said, okay, well, maybe it won't work out. Then I worked in consulting for a few years, and 3 years ago I came back to Latvia. Did some freelance consulting, but then I thought again, okay, maybe, I mean, there was something interesting in the idea. It was definitely interesting. And I met another Ernest. I mean, there's no real startup without at least 2 Ernests, as the next speaker will, one of the next speakers will confirm. And I met Ernests Jenavs, who spent all of his life in education technology. He's worked for Lielvārds, which is one of the leading education publishers in Latvia. He managed the creation of a digital library, and so he understood a little bit more about us, about how this works. And together we said, okay, well, we might actually be able to pull this off. And so we started again. And that was the second attempt in the summer of 2014. And this time we did it slightly differently. First we had a team that really covered the bases. So Ernest understood the education technology side. I understood the business side. The other Ernest was from an analytics side. We again found Edgar's, who by this time had gone off to Edinburgh to study artificial intelligence and computer science. And then we convinced him to drop that and rejoin us after we promised it might be something a little bit more like the 100 lats, because obviously there were no more lats by then. That's we've been building since then, and we very actively started going out to schools and talking to all the schools we could, and really learning about what their problem is. We understood that some of the things that we tried to do were really unhelpful. So initially we're trying to just build a student software to teachers, but then we realized that actually, well, the parent feedback and teacher feedback is as important, if not more important, to principals. And actually, we found out that the municipality is the one paying for it. And so they actually care a lot about the feedback, and they have actually the bigger problem than the school leaders. So we thought we were just helping teachers, but actually we needed to help the school leaders, and we needed to help the municipality leaders. So we're trying to build a prototype for a completely different user than we should have. This is a small part of the team right now. In 2014 autumn, we went to Startup Sauna Accelerator in Finland. which was again sort of talking to Finnish education system experts, which led us to doing some work in Finland now. Then 2015, we got into Emerge Education, which is the leading education technology accelerator in Europe, based in London, which connected us with Eton College, with Oxford University Press, one of the leading publishers who we're working with now. We also managed to get some funding, so we attracted an early stage fund from Imprimatur Capital, which is an early stage Latvian VC, an angel investor from Australia, who was the founder of the company I worked for after consulting, and then I invested some of my money in as well. So that was our 240,000 investment round. There's a number of moments in a startup's life where you sit there and you're thinking, and you're saying to the team, okay guys, now it's serious. And every next time you go, well, now it's serious. At first, when we got the 50,000 soft loan, we could finally start paying some salaries to some people. Then it was the investment fund and getting it Emerge, when we said, okay, well now we can build a team. And this summer was another moment like that, when we got a 1.9 million euro grant from the European Commission under the Horizon2020 Innovation Support Scheme, which has allowed us to grow to the team that we now have, with 20 people sitting here in Riga, not very far from here, and trying to really build this into a scalable product. Now, where to next? We're now at the stage when we have built a fantastic team. Two of them, Artur and Paul, sitting at the back. So if you want to talk to somebody who actually understands the code, please raise your hands. Talk to those guys. They will answer all the questions about the wonderful code that we have under the hood, which I comfortably ignore. We now have a fantastic team. We have an idea of who our customers are and what we need to do for them. And now it's a matter of validating what we've built. So, I mean, we've built a prototype, but now it's about scaling that up and using it with, in South Africa, it's 1,500 schools if our initial pilots are successful. So that's just sort of 3 times more schools than we could work with in Latvia. In the UK, it's a 50-school network, which is seen by all international chains as a very respectable school network. And we want to try finding what insights they need and helping them deliver that. We also work with education publishers who actually care a lot about finding whether their products actually work in education sense. Do they improve student motivation? Do they improve confidence? Do they improve safety? All these things you can't measure by grades. So we're working with them to figure out how their products are working. So that's a very exciting 2 years ahead for us. Now, taking a step back, and I'm sort of being here in front, there's always the sort of pressure, you need to give some advice. And obviously I can't give you any practical advice on the things that you care most about, so I'll sort of give some advice from the sidelines. How many of you have thought about wanting to get involved or start a startup at some point in their life in the foreseeable future? Okay, about half of you. Don't, if you can, find any reasons why that's not the only way for you to fight for your passion. Anyone doing a startup, being one of the early people, is going to be the most it is going to be the most difficult thing you can do, probably except for having twins. But again, I cannot comment on the comparison. I don't have that experience. But it's an incredibly challenging thing. There's a lot of people who start a startup because they want to start a startup, and I've met people who sort of sit down and say, okay, well, let's find some smart people and figure out what startup do we want to build. That's a really bad way to start a startup, because it's a little bit like somebody learning how to paint and saying, I'm an artist now, and I'm just going to draw and sell my artwork. I mean, one of the most famous Latvian artists, Rotko, he's the guy who everybody goes, I could do that. Yet somehow he's captured the emotion, and for startups it's a little bit like that. You have to capture the pain of the customer, and you have to solve that. But it all starts with the team. It's about never trying to be the smartest person in the room, finding what you don't know, and finding the people who can do what you don't know. That's why I have those guys who are far smarter in understanding what's going on there than I could ever even dream to be. So I don't have to try, so that's really easy, and I can focus on having lunches with investors, which happens to be my specialty. But when we started, when we got our first investors, we showed that we have ability in business, in analysis, in education, in design, and that all came together. So you really need a very strong team to start with. They talk about investors having the 3 T's. 3 T's which you can raise on. Team, traction, or technology. If you have like the only, let's say you've built a teleport, you could say if you've demonstrated that it works, you could probably get some investment on that, regardless of what the team is or whether that's used by anyone. If you have 1 million users for the Yo app, suddenly somebody's going to want to invest in the Yo app, even though it doesn't do anything, because you have 1 million users. But then if you have a team, which is usually the first thing you do, that's a really strong foundation to start raising with. The second is talk about the idea, whatever idea you have, with anyone who's willing to listen. I meet people all the time who go, I have this wonderful idea, it's going to change everything. I just can't talk about it now, we're just finalizing some things. I mean, there's some detail. It's sort of about basketball, but that's it. What do you think? And that usually, my confidence in the idea goes, because the opportunities come from where you least expect them. And that, like South Africa, potentially working with 1,500 schools there. I was in a conference, and I asked a question, and a person from South Africa asked a question, and then she came to me and asked, are you the guy who asked that question? Which, in fact, I wasn't, because somebody else asked the question that she was asking for, and I said, no, but I'm really interested in hearing how you think about feedback, because I heard you're from South Africa. And that led us to doing the biggest project in the business. And these things come from all different angles where you never expect them. So talk to anyone. And if the idea is so easy to copy that you're worried somebody else is going to just copy it, then it's probably not worth doing. Because it all starts with the team, somebody without the team with just hearing how awesome your idea is won't be able to do much about it. And the final lesson that we learned very hard the first time we did it, before you even start thinking about what the product is, understand your customer very, very well. That means sit with them and understand how their day goes. That means asking them questions without trying to sell them anything. Just ask them to confirm that they have the problem without saying you have the solution. And that's something that we're doing now when we work with clients. We just say, okay, forget about what Edurio does. Just talk about how you interact with your customers, what are the things you want to find out from your students and from your parents and teachers, and what are the problems that you're facing. And that's the only way you can create a product that you don't have to push onto people, that will be pulled by people. It usually starts from seeing some kind of a pain. For me, it was analyzing the surveys, but then you need to go out and validate it with a lot of people to understand where the problems are. So that's me. As I said, very happy to meet many of you afterwards. But Pauls and after the guys who know the important things. Are there any questions in Latvian or English or German if it's about Vienschnitzels?
I have a question in context of your last comment about what's important for a startup. And I heard the opinion, it's not mine, just wanted your thoughts on it. It's that investors, the most interesting kind of entrepreneur is the one who eventually is ready to sell his startup. It's kind of when they can take their investment with profit back. So they want to see this profit. And can you confirm or any comments on that?
So there are different ways to building a business. And I mean, what's a startup? A startup is something that scales beyond putting in hours, right? So there are various paths. Like what Mikus did is he managed to build a revenue stream and build a lot of the business off the top of that. And so he approached a safety element. We raised most of our money before we got any revenues. Then we had the EU grant, which is obviously a very alternative track, because most of the general investors, when they look at education, they go, I can really understand what you're doing. I think this is a wonderful thing. Good luck. Because obviously schools are slow, and so building a startup is a lot more difficult than, let's say, fintech. But investors in general are trying to find for the one thing that will multiply their investment 100 times. Most investors are looking for the Facebook, for the unicorn. And for us, there are investors who invest because they expect educational impact. For others, there are incubators or accelerators who invest because they think the team could do something cool. There are angel investors where it's all about very different motivations. They may care about you, they may care about the idea, etc. So it all depends on who you talk to.
I have a question about your Horizon grant. You mentioned that actually the 1.8 is a pretty big number for Latvian partner. So maybe you can tell a bit more about what kind of partners you had, what kind of road map you had.
Yes.
And what's the key reasons why your project idea was funded, but a lot of others were not?
So, for those who don't know, Horizon2020 is EU's way to support research and innovation. Now, in general, they need partners from different countries. They have one instrument which is called the Small Medium Enterprise Instrument, where you can apply a loan. And so we applied a loan. We qualified under the Open Disruptive Innovation Scheme. There are two reasons why we succeeded. One is the idea can really improve the education globally if schools start understanding how the students, parents and teachers are feeling a lot better. So they care about having social impact as well as potential for financial impact. The second thing is commitment. Now, when I came to Latvia 2013, and I was thinking about startup ideas, I thought, Horizon 2020, that looks really interesting. I mean, we're far too early for that, but it could be very valuable for Edurio. So I really wanted to find more about it, and so I did the only reasonable thing in that condition. I applied to be an evaluator, which means I became an expert evaluating other submissions for 2 years before I wrote my own. And so I did most of the writing with some great support from the team, but by then I had seen 100 different submissions, so I knew very much what they're looking for. You don't have to do that to write a good Horizon 2020 proposal, but what I've seen, and this is not just ours but in general, Latvian startups or Latvian companies approach it like a research project, when it's actually like applying for investment. You have to demonstrate the business proposal, you have to demonstrate that you have commercial ability, you have to demonstrate that it's interesting to international partners. We had letters of intent from Oxford University Press, University College London, the Latvian Ministry of Education, Riga City Council, so we showed that a lot of people find it very interesting for them, and that helped us a lot. It's always best, and this is for investment as well as grants, if somebody else says you're amazing rather than you having to say you're amazing. So if we had the ministry say we're amazing, then that helped a lot for the independent evaluators.
And apart from those letters of intent, how many customers or test customers you had at the moment when you applied for this?
At that moment we had, that was when we had about 200 schools. So 100 from that was Riga alone. So Riga used this in all the schools, and the rest were different schools in Latvia. And then we had very early stage pilots with Eton and a municipality in Finland. Okay, well, I hope to meet some of you later, but thank you very much.
Salad and vegetables.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye, good night.